All right. Well, great. REI Freedom Fighters, happy Tuesday, noontime. I hope this is a great lunch hour break from you guys. We're going to share a great story with you today with one of our students, Mike Graham. It's a great ending, but his story to get there has a lot of twists and turns, and really excited to share with everybody because I think we could all learn from this experience today. And, there's a lot of us who want to get our first deal. They want to get away from the 9 to 5 and not be at lunchtime right now and be doing a podcast or something like this, a recording, and making good money in the process. So we're going to just basically over the next 15, 20 minutes, gonna maybe even not that long, share some story of Mike's first deal as a wholesaler. So, hey, Mike, how's it going?
Yeah, it's going great. I'm still at the pitch me moment. Super excited that I got this deal. My confidence level is so much higher now that I've actually like walked the steps. And yeah, I mean, I can just start talking about basically from beginning to end how this whole deal went.
But first, let's introduce you. So
Oh
you're
yeah.
Mike Graham. Where are you from? What do you do? Let's go. Let's start there.
Yeah. So yeah, I'm Mike Graham. I am officially a wholesaler up in Essex County of Massachusetts. I've been doing this for a little while now, and I just closed my first deal. And yeah, and I'm just excited to see how this future goes.
What do you do outside of wholesaling professionally?
So actually, back in early February is when I got laid off from my job, and I decided to screw it. I'm just going to do this full time. So I've just been at this full time. I've been sending out mailers. I've been doing cold calling. I've been building up my buyers list. So this has been my full time job since then.
What made you decide to go all in on wholesaling? I mean, that's pretty risky, especially since you didn't have a job.
Yeah. So the reason why I actually went into this is like real estate's always been interesting to me. I have a couple income properties as we speak, but what I've realized is over time is you eventually run out of capital and you kind of have trouble being able to come up with that to go buy other properties. And so that's when I started kind of doing a little more research like years ago of like, how do people keep doing this? And wholesaling kept popping up. And then you go from wholesaling to wholetailing to flipping, and that's how you generate more income to eventually you can buy more income properties. And I've been at this for a while now. And, when I got laid off, they gave me a severance. I had a little bit of a cushion. And I finally just said, like, you know what? Like, I've been doing this part time with not much traction. And I decided I'm just going to go all in and see, like, if this is like really a thing, if this is something that I can do. That was the reason why I just went all in and crossed my fingers and said, let's go.
And when you went all in, what made you decide to like reach out to us, join our coaching program, as opposed to maybe other coaching programs or any coaching program at all?
Yeah, so actually, I've been going to these real estate meetups held by White Acre Property, and there was one, I believe it was December, which is the one where you were presenting
Right.
in. And so we went through it, and I went home, and I'm like, oh, that'd be cool and everything, but I still had like the day job, and I'm like, okay, so I'm still kind of doing things. And then when I got laid off, kept thinking to myself, like, I've been at this for a while, and I haven't gotten a deal. I'm like, I'm doing something, or probably many things, which I found out I was doing many things wrong. So I'm like, I don't know, something's just telling me like I need someone to kind of help me walk through this process step by step. So then that's when I remembered like, oh, Jeremy had his whole presentation. So I went back through the presentation slides, found your contact info. And then we started talking, I think, the next day. And then I think the day after that, that's when I signed up for everything and we were rocking and rolling. So yeah, so I met you I'm not actually like you at the time, but I met you through White Acre Property, and that's how I was able to make my
That's
decision.
right. Now, joining a coaching program is very scary. It's not cheap. It is an investment.
Yeah.
I mean, that's still a pretty ballsy move to take that leap of faith, especially with no money coming in.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. But again, it was the same mindset of, balls to the wall. I'm just going to really see, like, at this point, I'm just going to see if this can happen.
Yeah.
So I gave and at the time, like, it was kind of a loose timeline of like when I was finally going to say like, okay, I'm done with this. I'm going to pivot. I'm going to do something else. But I had, I think given myself like around 9 more months of a runway where I'm like, all right, it's either going to happen or it's not. And again, it was just I need to really make sure that like, if this actually happens, I know I did everything possible. And I think the coaching group would have been one of those things. If I never did it, I would have regretted it because I never would have. I would have been thinking like, oh, what if I missed out on like key information and stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Well, all right. So let's talk about your first deal. All right, because that's. Right. I mean, obviously, we're here today because it's a tremendous ending, but getting to the end of this road was not easy. I always tell people wholesaling is a simple business, but it is not easy. Getting a property under contract is an amazing accomplishment. Getting it to closing is a whole other animal. So with that being said, you got this deal. How did you get the lead? Tell us how the lead source came in.
So the lead source, what I did was when I joined the group, I actually restructured basically who I'm going after. Originally, I was going after maybe 2,000 houses. I expand that to 6,000, but I was also going after more targeted lists, like the tax liens list. There's something where you need to go to, the courthouses to pull all that stuff. I was also pulling firehouses. Or houses that had fires and stuff like that. But then I also pulled
niche list.
Right, exactly. But this one, so this one actually popped up on a couple of my lists, but it was more of one of them was the bulk list, so like the absentee list. But they also popped up on the trust list. So this guy got it through a trust as well. So I was able to pull that.
I'm sorry, I'm going to keep asking questions, Mike. I just want to make sure people understand. Where did you get the list from? Where did you pull them from?
So I get them through my CRM, which is through Envello. And there's a group out there that I kind of follow as well, where there's someone actually who's a real estate investor. They're from Lawrence, Mass. And they've actually built out a CRM that's actually really specifically tailored to real estate investing. Kind of like how the UI and everything is set up. So I got it through there. They actually, like through their billing plan, you can actually go and build lists themselves, which will pull from public records. Those are the bulk lists. The more specialized lists, like the tax liens and the houses with fires, you go to the town hall. Okay. And then my last list was I still had driving for dollars. So I did more of list stacking with that because it wasn't really performing, but I still wanted to sprinkle a few of those in.
All right. So you had 2,000 properties. Came into our coaching program. You expanded that into how many properties?
6,000 that I'm marketing to right now.
6,000. Okay. And how are you marketing to those 6,000?
So I started off with direct mail. I'm doing about 750 mailers a week for 8 weeks. So I'll get us to 6,000. So I've been doing that. And then on the side, because I was saying this is full time, I said, like, I got to do whatever I can to build this pipeline. So then I got the Mojo triple line dialer after, let me jump back. I actually started hand dialing 2,000 properties, just doing it myself on my phone. I'm like, well, this is awful. So then I got the triple line dialer, and that helped me expedite it. So I made about 6,000 phone calls at this point through like various numbers. So I was able to get leads through that. And then I was able to get more leads also through the mailing as well.
Okay. So, when I'm talking to people in this industry that are relatively new, don't have much experience, and they think they can just pull a couple, like 100 houses driving for dollars and call and they're going to get a deal. But the reality is when you're doing cold lead outreach, right? Cold lead marketing, which is cold calling and direct mail. Mm-hmm. You have to touch a lot of properties. I mean, you got a deal now, but how many properties in total do you think you've reached out to get this one deal?
So we've gone through one entire mailing cycle. So I know that
6,000.
We've hit 6,000. Now I will say though, within those 6,000, I also have a lot more leads in the pipeline. So I went from 3 leads to, I think I'm now at between 35 and 40 in my pipeline, and
which you'll nurture, and eventually they'll come to fruition.
Right, exactly. But yeah, it takes a long time to get this started, and like you've said before, it's once you start getting things rock and rolling, you'll see a little bit more deals coming in. But at the beginning, it's tough because you keep reaching out, you keep spending money, and you're just like, oh boy.
Yeah, first 3 months are painfully slow, aren't they?
Yes. Yeah.
So, but it's a numbers game because it's cold outreach. So I tell everybody, like, when they're cold calling and mailing, to get your first deal, you're probably going to have to talk to about 7,000 properties. So you could either call them, mail them, or do, in your case, a combination of both, which I think is a great process. But basically, that's what it takes, right? You had to reach out to about 7,000 properties to get your first deal. It was a great deal, but you still had to reach out to talk to a lot of people.
Exactly. Yep. Yeah. This is very interesting, but glad I did it. Still hitting the cold calling though. Still got to build the pipeline.
Never stops, brother. Never stops. Consistency is key. So where did this lead come from? Was it cold calling or was it a direct mail?
So this came from direct mail.
Okay. So tell us about the seller and how that initial first call went.
Yeah. So initially the seller reached out to me, said they got my piece of mail. It was the mail piece that had kind of like a fake check on it, which I believe we did 80% of the value of the property or what it was appraised for. And he reached out, said he got this piece of mail. He said he was also calling a few other people just to get a sense of like, what does the process look like? So that was kind of super quick, kind of seeing like, oh, okay, this is kind of like what my business is. This is how I can help you. So then through that conversation, I started kind of probing, finding out like, why is he looking to sell? So just to try to really like understand like, what is their pain point? Why do they want to sell? And find ways of like trying to find common ground with them. So he lived in Nebraska. Again, he had this house through a trust. So it was just kind of house that was given to him. He's had it for in Massachusetts. Yeah. Correct. In Lawrence, actually. And he's just over the years, he's just kind of stopped caring about it. So the tenants, they're very slow to pay rent. The property is kind of in disrepair. He's having trouble getting a hold of the tenants anyway, regardless. So it's just been very difficult and he's just over it. And then I found out at the end of the day, he wants a bunch of cash so then he can do a big project in his house in Nebraska. So I'm like, oh, okay, well, that makes sense.
Yeah, good job probing those questions. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. So, but yeah, like we were kind of talking about like I have income properties, so I've talked about the troubled tenants. So we were able to find common ground on that and be able to build a rapport based on that. And then from there, because he was in Nebraska, he set up a walkthrough with me and the tenant on the first floor, who was kind of acting as like a property manager. Not a great one.
Before we get there, did you have the property under contract before you went to go see it?
No. So what I did was, no, I didn't do that. I waited until I actually walked through the property.
Okay.
Because I wanted to give my best offer that I could possibly give to him. I didn't want to throw a number out, especially being my first deal and then having to go back and be like, never mind, I got to go lower or something, right?
Okay. So you went to go see one of the tenants who's acting as a property manager to walk you through the property so you can see its condition.
Correct. Exactly. So that's what I did. Went over there. I took as many photos as possible, so when I have that and when I go market it later, I have like very detailed what this house looks like for the end buyers, but we'll get to that. So I walked through each of the units. I took as many detailed pictures as possible, took a bunch of pictures on the outside. I really wasn't there that long because it was the owner wasn't there at the time.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, well, I'm just going to take his pictures.
More informational at this point.
Exactly. So then later that night, that's when I called him and we started discussing, what the numbers actually look like. And originally we were pretty far off. I think there was a gap of $100,000 that we were both off on.
What? $100,000?
Yeah.
That's a wide gap, man. That's just huge. Exactly.
So I went in pretty low because I was also, as being my first deal, like, understanding construction costs and stuff. I have a general sense, but like, who knows how far off you are.
Did you give the first offer or did he give you a number that he wanted first?
He was very vague on the numbers. I know that he was kind of giving ranges around like, it was like 450 to 500. So he was kind of in the middle there. So
you came in and anchored low?
I came in and anchored low, right? Okay. Because he was also telling me before the walkthrough that the price is negotiable. He was just kind of giving like his high number. And something I learned in the coaching group is, buyer or sellers will always give like a really high number. But generally when you kind of get to the property and you kind of talk through how much work it needs, they tend to move a little more. So I went with that. I'm like, all right, well, we'll just go with that. So then I called, I started real low. not like real low, but pretty low, enough where I felt comfortable. And he started higher. And then we started talking about, how much work was needed. And I just said, like, out of the blue, I'm like, Evan, are you a numbers person? He's like, absolutely a numbers person, because he started getting really into the details. I am also a numbers person. So I think that really helped me. So I started going like deep into like how much it costs to borrow the money, how much the closing cost can be, how much of the reno is going to be, what's the risk of having the tenants in there, what's that do to lawyer fees. Like, so I was able to take a price. I was able to kind of like back into like what an appropriate price would be. And that's how I was still kind of landing on my lower number. And then I started seeing him back it down a bit, quite a bit actually. And we ended up, I think I went up, at the end of the day, I went up about 35 grand. So he came all the way down 65 grand to his. Yeah.
Wow. And how did you feel about that number at 35K higher?
I was nervous.
Okay.
Very nervous actually, but that's when I posted, we have like the group chat in the small group coaching, and I started putting some feelers out there, and everyone was just like, just lock it up, like lock it up,
as low as possible, baby.
Yeah. And I think that was going to be like a self-sabotage for me, because like, I didn't feel confident with it, where you guys were just like, just do it. You'll find it. You'll be able to move it. So
time out for 1 second. I just want to touch on that because it's really important that you mentioned that. One of our other students, Mike Vigiant and Matt, they just got a deal too, and we'll talk about that soon. But again, we want to make sure everything closes first. But they almost walked away from a deal too, thinking that the number was too high. And on our coaching call, I said, no, you just got to go lock it up as soon as possible. And, it's going to hopefully, knock on wood, work out in their favor. A lot of times, we can, think to ourselves, especially if we only have a few buyers. This is why a large buyer pool is huge. If you only have a few buyers and you're trying to get feelers for them, they're like, nobody's going to pay this much. It's too high. And they're like, well, I want to be lower. Of course, everybody wants to be lower. But doesn't mean there's buyers out there who won't pay more, which you found out in this situation, quite a bit more actually. But, you could have easily told yourself that 35K was too high and said, I have no deal there, and walked away. And you would have out a ton of money in the process.
Yeah, right. Exactly. So yeah, I mean, if it weren't for you guys just like pushing me to do it, I probably would have walked from it.
So lock it up as low as possible. Mm-hmm. Right. That's the lesson here. Lock it up as low as possible, and then put it through the process and let the buyers determine what the market value is for the property. Let us not have a preconceived notion or pre-qualify to a point where we may not even do the deal. Is that correct?
Right. Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So you got the deal under contract. You came up 35,000. They came down 65,000. Now he's in Nebraska. You have a multifamily property with tenants that maybe aren't all that responsive, communicative. You have it under contract at this point. Did getting it under contract with somebody in Nebraska, was it that easy? Did you just send a DocuSign? How did that work?
Yeah, so it was pretty straightforward. I sent to DocuSign, and then they wanted to look it over real quick. I said, it's a very standard purchase and sale. So I sent it to them, and they signed it, and it was all set to go. It was like him and his wife, so it was actually pretty quick. So yeah, the DocuSign was real easy. I had it in contract, and then I had on the contract P&S, I have $100 deposit, something low. Sent it off. It's in escrow. Now we're set to market this. So another learning lesson I had through this process was pull the title and the MLC right away. So what I did was I waited a week, and what I realized is like what you say is like time's a deal killer. So like we want to remove every single obstacle. So now, which is on my checklist that I'm writing for future, is like pull it the second everything's in escrow, just so there's no delays. And another thing I think of is like when you go and do like the open house to market it, you can, maybe say like, oh yeah, the title's already clean. Like you've already pulled it, it's set to go. So it's just, kill two birds with one stone on that.
The reason why this is important is a lot of times we don't want to spend the money, especially when we're new in this business of pulling title and getting it cleared. Because if we don't feel confident, which you obviously didn't at this point, it's your first deal, right? You're like, if I don't get this thing closed, I'm out $100 EMD, not a big deal, but I could be out hundreds and hundreds of dollars in title work here, right? And that's scary. But what we find is titles usually have some issues with them, and they need time to get them clear so you can get to closing. And every week matters. And we see sometimes when attorneys are involved, things can change, and a week can change, and people's mindset changes. So you really want to get the ball rolling. And as I always say, shorten the timeline, because time is a deal killer. But that's a great lesson to share with everybody today.
Yep, exactly. Yep. So actually, once that whole process started, I now had a week before when I got it closed, when I got it under contract to when I was going to market it. And then,
Okay.
by then, you always say like have at least 150 buyers on your buyers list. So I think at the time I was around 90. So I'm like, all right, well now I got to go market this. I should have been doing it a little bit more further up, but I was so focused on acquisition. So now I had a whole week of just like absolutely grinding. I had 12-hour days. I was like pulling cash buyers from the MLS. I was also going on Zillow looking for houses that are clearly flipped, trying to skip trace those owners.
You're hustling. You're
Yeah.
hustling buyers, because we talked on the phone. I say, you need to hustle, brother. You need to get buyers going, right? And
Exactly.
what I did my first deal, I had, I share on the story a lot. I've had like a couple different price reductions because I didn't have a lot of cash buyers. It was very common. That's why I'm always with the new students, build your buyers list, build your buyers list. And it's the hardest thing to do. And it's actually the least exciting thing in the business, right? Is getting cash buyers.
Right.
But all of a sudden you're so focused on the acquisitions, and then you get yourself in a situation where you get this deal, you're like, shoot, I don't have enough buyers. And then you're trying to play catch up. That's why it's important. And again, another lesson here, guys, for people who are watching, you need to be focused on acquisitions, but building your cash buyers list at the same time equally is important. And this doesn't end Mike's still very early on in his first year in this business. He needs to keep working on it, building that buyers list throughout the rest of this year, if not longer, as he continues to, vet his new leads that come in consistently. So great lesson there. So you're hustling to get buyers, but how are you going to market this property? Tell everybody how you're going to do it, because obviously it doesn't sound like you were just going to send it out to a few cash buyers, right?
Right. So what I did was I did a couple things. One, I actually put together a flyer. My fiance actually put together a flyer on Canva, made it look nice and professional. Kind of gave some highlights about the property. It was a quick picture what the starting asking price is going to be. And on the what I did was I posted on Facebook. I joined 12 real estate groups up around Essex County, New Hampshire, that general area, and I just blasted that I had a 3-family. Start asking price, call me for details about the open house, like ready to do this.
And what was your starting asking price?
Starting asking price was $5,000 above my actual price I got on.
$5,000. Now, a lot of people, when they're going out and marketing their properties, they're putting $30K, $20K, $15K. Why do you only do $5K?
Well, it's the same thing like anything else. Like you want to kind of create like a fire sale. You're like, this is a dirt cheap price. You want to be able to, like, once people saw that, it was so much traction. Like people were real interested. Like,
more eyes on it.
Right, exactly.
And we know that it bid up to a lot more than $5K when it was all said and done, huh?
Exactly.
You had to trust the process. All right. So how were you're marketing it out through mailings, text messages, Facebook groups? How is everybody going to see the property?
So what I did, so after I got Facebook groups, I got all their info, I mailed it out. I was texting people, confirming like, hey, can I want to confirm, are you going to be there? So I did that like the day before, like, are you going to be there and stuff like that. A lot of confirmation. So what I did was I set up a day in the middle of the week during like a lunch hour. So this is when all like the fix and flippers, contractors, people who really do this, that's when they're going to go. So I set up the time and I did an 1.5 hour walkthrough from 12 to 1:30 at the property. I stood out front. Anytime someone came in, I had them sign my sign-in sheet, which it's somewhere in my desk. I had the sign-in sheet. I gave them a quick blurb about the property, kind of gave them like a crash course of everything. And then
this was a one-time showing. One time everybody could see it. This was a week after you got the property under contract. Did you tell the seller that you were going to have people walking through the house during this time?
Yes. So what I did was I told my seller that I partner up with a bunch of different real estate investors. through, going through different properties. And what I'm going to do is just set up kind of like an hour and a half of them going to walk through the property. And then whichever ones are interested in partnering up, then that's the one I'm going to work with. So I kind of set it up to them. It's some people, it's hard for people to grasp like what wholesaling is. So I make it simpler. Like I partner with these investors and then that's how we buy the property.
And did they care that you were maybe partnering up with somebody else to sell the property to?
No, they just care that they're going to get their money and be done with the property.
100%. 100%. So how did you learn about this one-time walkthrough experience, like the market to show the property this way?
Well, it came from you. So, there's the first part of the training, the small group coaching, which is the acquisitions, but then there's the disposition. And that, that's where you kind of came in and coached me through every step of the way. Cause I was also being that this is my first time, I was kind of like a deer in headlights, like, oh, okay, how is this going to work? So yeah, that's where you told me, like, you've done this through, so many of these, and, you've done trial and errors and it works like Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday, middle of the day. That's when you're going to get the best traction for this.
You got some good traction that day.
Yes. I had 22 groups show up. So I believe there was multiple investors.
22 groups walking through this property, all competing against each other for this one deal.
Exactly. Yep.
Excellent. Yeah. And you had tenants in place. That's a hurdle to overcome. How did you handle showing a property of multifamily property with different apartments and different tenants?
Yeah. So what I actually did was I showed up about a half hour before the open house, and I went to each unit, and I actually purchased a $15 gift card to like Dunkin' Donuts to all three of them. And when I first got there, you could tell they were like visibly annoyed. Like these tenants were like, I don't want to be bothered and stuff like that. The second I gave them a $15 gift card at Dunkin' Donuts, their demeanor changed. One of them actually left to go get dunks. The other two actually stayed there, but they were very pleasant to all of the people that came through. They were more than accommodating. So it just made it like a lot easier, especially so with tenants in place, like I'm going to do that moving forward. It just changed it. And then when I walked through after and I told them, hey, we're done with this. Thank you so much. Walk me through. They were so thankful. They were happy. I'm like, okay, good. This all went smoothly.
And made the process a lot smoother, because I remember talking about you with this ahead of time. I said, hey, just go get them a gift card. It'll probably get them out of the house if they, and if they stay, obviously, a lot better. But that, $45 to just make sure everything runs smoothly, rather than you having like one tenant or two tenants lets you in and one that doesn't.
Yeah.
And the whole day could be really spoiled, right?
Right, exactly. And being that the seller is in a different state,
right, you have no control.
Yeah. So super helpful.
You got them gift cards. They're like, all right, cool, come in. You got the property open for about 60 to 90 minutes. You have everybody signing in. You have 22 groups walking through this property at one time. It must have been absolute chaos, which is awesome, which is fun. And what we want. We want chaos. We want a circus, because that's how we make all the money in this business. So they all walk through the property asking you a ton of questions. And then what do you do from there?
So what I did from there was, if the people were giving me business cards, that's fine. But I had all their contact info on the sign-in sheet. So then what I said before they walk, when they came up to the house, I gave them the spiel. And I said at the end of the spiel, offers are due by end of business day tomorrow. So I let them know. So in case they walked through and I was busy, they had to leave, they at least knew that information. And, half of them probably came up to me after, had a few more questions. But yeah, generally from there, I waited till tomorrow, that next day, for all these offers to come in.
And the reason why we don't give a hard deadline is because if you say by 3:00 tomorrow, all of a sudden at 3:30, your highest and best deal is going to come through and it's going to be too late. So we always like to keep the end of business day tomorrow, let everybody filter it in throughout the busy day. And really, you can make a decision that night or the next day. Just allows more room for error, because at the end of the day, you don't want to be missing out. And again, this is a lesson I learned the hard time our way. We used to have a deadline, got to be here by 4:00, and then we'd pick a deal at 4, and all of a sudden a great deal would come in at 4:30, and we're like, we should have just waited a half an hour, So those are the lessons you learn. So you tell everybody highest and best the next day. They start sending you offers the next day, or were people trying to take this property down before the inspection or during the inspection, or trying to talk you in out of it, just going with other people? How did you handle all that?
I'd say within the first hour of me posting on Facebook and sending it off, people were already asking, like, for me to, sign a purchase and sale with them, and like pending an inspection, of course, like all of that. But within the first hours, and like all the way up through when I actually gave my decision, which was the following day at like noon, people were saying like, "Oh, I'll do it for this. Let's lock it up. Let's lock it up. Let's lock it up." And like, I'll let you know if I'm going to go with you at the end. But it was very matter of fact. It's very hard because there are enticing offers. Is that lock it up. But
and it's like, and you have an offer, right? You don't know what's going to happen. Your first deal, right? You're like, oh my God, this is guaranteed money, right? And this is what a lot of wholesalers do. As soon as somebody comes to them, let's lock it up there, they take the money and run. But that makes you kind of a motivated seller, right? Because you're basically looking for speed, convenience, and really certainty, and you're willing to risk more money to do the sure thing, which is what a distressed seller does, right? Mike, I want to sell to you as a discount because I wanted to make it easy, quick, and I want to make sure that you can have the certainty of getting it closed. That's what we're doing with cash buyer. But you had to trust the process here, which wasn't easy, I'm sure, especially on your first deal.
No, I think I remember I either called or texted you. I'm like, I've already gotten 3 offers, and you're like, hold off. I'm like, all right, fine. But yeah,
that's a good thing though. When they start doing that, that's how you know you have a deal. That's what you want. So it's great.
Yeah.
So you resist all the temptation. You have all these deals that, buyers, hey, give me your deal. Give me your deal. You're like, no, trust the process. You go to the end of the next business day.
Yeah.
How did that look? You got a bunch of offers that came in?
I got 8 out of 22 groups that came in. I got 8 offers. Yeah.
Wow. 8 offers.
Yeah, exactly. So that was really exciting to see all that come in and be like, okay, cool. Like, cause I was nervous. It was like, am I only going to get 2 offers? Or are people going to kind of back out at the end? And so,
and out of these offers, Mike, 8 of them, were they all over the map? Or they like right at a certain price point? Were they all at asking? Because you only had it at $5,000 over contract price.
I actually, 2 of them were actually below the asking. So those were already nixed, right?
Yeah.
But then the rest of them, they were kind of within about $20,000 of each other.
Okay. So knowing that you paid $35,000 more than you probably would have wanted to.
Yeah.
You only marketed it $5,000 over contract price.
Mm-hmm.
You learn through this process that you can never guess where buyers are willing to pay for properties, and that they're kind of all over the spectrum. We can't really have any preconceived notions on that.
Well, right. Like you can't really, I mean, even if like you're really good at this, you can't really pinpoint it because every single buyer has a different exit strategy. Right. So they could, what I've learned is actually a couple of them kind of came into me. It was odd. Like some of these people were coming in and talking strategy with me. I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Like one of them was talking about updating one unit and selling it as an owner occupant, not even touching the other units. Another guy was just going to do new windows and siding and sell it through through an FHA type of purchase. Other ones were just going to be income properties. The other one was going to be a full fix and flip. So it really depends, like how much is your cost going to be on it and what do you think you sell it for? So it's very tough to figure out.
So with that being said, Mike, when you were marketing this property, did you give rehab numbers on this property?
No, I didn't.
Okay. Knowing what you know now, do you feel like you need to give rehab numbers on properties?
Not at all. That's up to the buyer to decide whatever they're going to do.
Because you've learned that they all have different cost ideas and strategies. So you giving rehab numbers is really a moot point.
Right. I mean, if someone wants to do a full gut versus someone who wants to do a cosmetic, that could be a difference of $100,000. So why tell a buyer, oh, it's going to cost this much to do it? Let them figure it out.
People don't understand that actually giving rehab numbers prevents people from seeing the property more than it actually gets more eyes on the property. So that's a great lesson to share there as well. I love this deal. There's so many lessons to learn about this deal. That's why I'm stopping and interrupting. All right. So you get all these offers. You have 8 offers out of 22. 2 of them are way below asking, and like, so you got 6 deals. What did you do at that point?
So at that point, what I did was, I reviewed all the offers. Some of them had, I think one of them it was the highest at the time, but it also said that they want one of the units delivered vacant. I'm like, well, that's kind of out because it's not easy for the seller. So I'm focused on how do I make this as simple as possible. And I went with the second highest one. This one was with a hard money lender. So they were going to use a hard money lender. And when I was talking with you, we wanted to vet them before we go with them, because you told me, like, if there's cash on the table, generally you want to go with that. Remove as many roadblocks as possible, because they're gonna kick you at the end. So with this one, I decided to go with the hard money lender, because the cash buyer, the highest cash buyer, is about 15 grand lower, 15 or 20 grand.
That's a significant difference.
And that's why I wanted to be like, you know what, I'm going to see what I can do with the hard money. So the hard money, this buyer was a broker for that hard money lender. I confirmed with them they don't need to view the property, because during the open house, I also took many long videos of the property so I could send it to them. So they said, no, we don't need to walk the property. So that's another hurdle you just removed. And 3, they said they confirmed they can close on or before the close date. So to me, I was like, all right, this seems like a sure thing. We'll find out later.
Because with hard money, again, learning from experience, we don't work with hard money lending a lot when we wholesale deals in our business. We do occasionally, but we do vet them, because a lot of times they require appraisal, and they say we need 30 days to run the process. Your contract at this point may only have 2 or 3 weeks left. You may not have the 30 days. And again, we talked earlier in this live that time is a deal killer. We need to shorten the timeline. That extra week to 10 days could be something that makes this deal go away. Plus, you can't guarantee you can get somebody into this property to do another walkthrough and maybe find out at the last minute, at the 11th hour, the hard money lender is like, sorry, the appraisal came in low. We can't fund the full deal. And then you're screwed and have to go back to square one. So you have those hurdles. Yeah. So it's definitely something that you have to take into consideration when you're vetting hard money.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So what happened next was we had him review and sign the assignment of contract and send over earnest money. I had him overnight it, certified mail, like, you're going to send it to my lawyer. It's got to be in there. So the next day it was all in there, signed, set to go. And then from there, the only thing I had left up until closing was they wanted estoppel forms, which are basically saying what's the rent, who lives there, had they paid last month, and what's security. General information about that. So that was the only thing I had to do. So by then I had 2 weeks to close. So about a week in, that's when I go and I just go get the estoppel forms, like, oh, everything's good to go. Everything's good to go. And then all of a sudden, a week before we're about to close, we start getting ghosted by this buyer. And then, we're thinking like, okay, well, it's a Friday afternoon.
Well, hold on. Before we talk anymore, because this is a really important part. You got this guy you're talking about now, right? The offer that you accepted. How much of assignment is this at this point?
They had, so my difference was, what was it? It was $43,000.
So you went through this whole process. You accepted an offer of $3,000. Yeah. I mean, that's a ton of money, dude. That's like more money than a lot of people make in a year. Even for high earners, it's like a half a year pay. You made $43,000 assignment on your first deal, and you're getting ready to close in 2 weeks. And the next one is $15,000 less, right? So that's significant. So you went at $5,000 over asking, and you got somebody who paid $38,000 more than what your asking price was on this, which made you have a $43,000 assignment, which is incredible.
Yep, exactly.
Okay, so you have it under contract. You're getting all the information. Things are quiet, maybe a little too quiet.
Yeah, that's when like my inner gut, it was saying like something's off here. Like, if you should be hearing, especially like when you're getting to closing, like you should be getting the answers. Like, no news is not good news. Like, no news is bad news. Like, so
hold on to this deal, and you need to be making sure you are well aware of everything the whole step of the way. Because if you're just like, oh, it's fine, I'm on to the next thing, it's not always fine.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, a week before, it was like Friday afternoon. We started getting, we're starting to get the feeling like something's up. So anyway, I had my lawyers reach out to the seller or the buyer's lawyer.
Yeah.
And I'm always confusing them. But so then from there, it's like, you got to give us like an answer. And I gave the drop dead of like, I need an answer by noon on Monday if you're doing anything. And we didn't get any.
So you have a $43,000 deal with this buyer. It's quiet. They're not responding. And you had the courage to say, you have till Monday to either tell me you're moving forward or I'm canceling the deal with you. Are you freaking crazy? That's scary as shit, man. That's $43,000 that you're talking about.
But it was important. I had to do it because I had a week to go before the closing, and I couldn't wait for this person to make up their mind if they're going to do it or not. So yeah, I had to close it. That was stressful. That was very stressful.
Sure. What made you finally decide to say, all right, I'm going to do it? Was it just because you knew you had to go plan B, or just, because some people just say, well, hopefully they'll get back to me in time. We can ride this out and make it work. What was the final decision? They just didn't respond in that deadline?
They didn't respond to the deadline, and that's when I said, but I mean, that's when I was chatting with you and he's saying, like, we don't wait for anyone. Like, you get people who really want this. So that's where I decided, like, okay, noon on Monday, if I don't hear from you, we're sending out a release. Here's your security deposit, earnest money, whatever, back. And then I just start going to the next buyers. So once noon hit, sent that all off, started calling all of my other cash buyers. And just let them know that.
Thrilled to hear from you.
Thrilled. And I basically just said that, the last buyer wasn't able to commit to the terms that we had laid out. So we had to release some. Are you still interested? Of course, they all are. And they were thinking about rerunning their numbers because I've told them what the price I got for it before. So it was all back and forth with a few of them. And then actually this one cash buyer who's called me a couple times after I said I'm going with someone else, he reached out and ended up giving me $5,000 more than what the original price was.
Whoa, wait a second. So you had a $43,000 assignment on your first deal, something that you marketed for $5,000 over asking price, which was barely $35,000 too high, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know what $35,000 plus $45,000 is. That sounds a lot closer to where the buyer or the seller was originally when he wanted to sell the deal.
Yeah. Exactly.
So basically, you sold it at almost that price, but you negotiated all the way back down, provided value, and you kept that large difference in between.
Yep.
And nobody would have ever marketed it for $5,000 more. I don't even know if anybody would have canceled a $43,000 deal, only to find out then you have a cash buyer who's willing to pay $5,000 more and make it $48,000, which is basically $50,000 on one deal.
Yeah.
And he's a cash buyer, no hard money, and he can still close in time.
Still close in time. In fact, he was actually saying, I think if it was up to him, we would have closed within 2 days because he showed me a picture of his bank account. He had more than enough to pay for it. He's like, I got to put this money to work. Let's make the deal. And I think the only reason why we didn't close early is because all the attorneys wanted to close on the close date it said on the contract.
Yeah, exactly. Typical attorney. Well, hey, as Tom Kroll would do, congratulations. I mean, $48,000, dude. And it's closed. It's real. You have the money in your bank account. This happened before the 4th of July. Happy freaking 4th of July to you. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, I'm still in the pinch me moment. Super excited. I'm going to reinvest all of it, put it into, do I double down on, I'm still thinking about it. Do I double down on the mail?
After that's about the next.
Yeah. We'll figure that out. But, yeah, I mean, it's just super pumped. I'm super relieved because I've been doing this since June of last year, putting a ton of money, my own money into this. And, even before I joined the group. So like once I joined the group, it was probably like 3 months since I joined the group. That's where I get like the first deal. I saw more traction. But with this assignment, it pays for everything that I've already put into it and then some. So I'm like, ooh, I can breathe. And now I can.
And tell me what it's like to get that first deal, because I always say, like, my check, which is right here, people, it is $5,000, not $50,000 like my chair, $48,000. But the power of belief of getting that first deal is like, holy moly, this works. I can do this. You have that feeling now, Mike.
Yeah, exactly. Because I thought for a while, I'm just like, am I part of like this giant like scam or something? Like I was just like, why isn't this working? Why isn't this working? And finally, it's like when you see that money come through, you're like, okay, like it is true. You can buy off-market properties. You can still make a ton of money off it. Like people will sell you a house for less than what they would on the MLS for ease of transaction and just a simple process. And you can make a substantial amount of money doing this.
Heck yeah. So, Mike, why don't you, you talked about, you started last June. Here it is July, right? You started a few months ago in our coaching program. What what's the difference? What made it not work to a point where you're like, what's wrong? Am I doing everything wrong? Is this a scam? What is the case? To now you have a $48,000 deal on you.
Well, there's quite a few things. Well, number one, my marketing list was way too small. It was a third of the size of what it should have been. Third of the size of what it should have been. Also, I was talking to these potential sellers, but not in like the right way, not really understanding what is their true pain points, like really try to find a solution tailored to them. How do you kind of fix all that? I wasn't
more focused on numbers, correct?
exactly right. Yeah, exactly. I was overthinking it. So I was talking to them the wrong way. I wasn't immediately going out and checking the property. If people gave really high prices, I kind of wrote it off and be like, well, they don't want that, and just move on. And then from there, and also like my buyers list, I think before I joined the group was 15, just 15. I'm like, this should be good enough, right? So, all of those things I knew I was doing wrong, and I never even got to the point of dispositioning a property. So I never even knew like what to really do with that.
How did you learn all these things?
Through the coaching group. Yeah.
So knowing what you know now, right? Does it make sense to just hire a coach? Because you were for 6 months struggling, 6-7 months.
Yeah.
Eventually quit your job, which then you said, I'm going all in, which is ballsy. Spent money to hire a coach, which is ballsy. But did it really expedite the situation and teach you a lot of things that you thought you knew, but you didn't know?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like I could tell within the first couple, so we have like those weekly group meetups, and each time I was going through one of those, I would like be talking with my dad about it, talking to my fiance. I'm like, I have learned so much in the 3 weeks already that I ever have done in like the past 9 months. I was already excited for within the first few weeks of just like, this is already worth it. And then like, once I started seeing like the pipeline build up, I saw like the traction amplify so much faster with joining the group. So super excited about it. And now I have the proof of concept. I can make money, and I'm just going to keep going with it.
Well, I appreciate you taking time today during this lunch hour to share your story, because there's a lot of twists and turns here, a lot of ups and downs, a lot of lessons to be shared, right? So, there's a lot of times we think about things go a certain way, but we don't know what we don't know. We think we have a deal in the contract with a buyer. The buyer may not perform. You got to cancel that buyer. You got attorneys involved. Attorneys can be really complicated and difficult to deal with. Hard money lenders can be difficult to deal with. You got tenants and showing the property, and how do you market the property? It's like all these different things you have to navigate, and getting a property under contract is amazing. But as we found out in this conversation, getting it to closing is even a different, it's like a whole different animal, right? So it's like, hey, I got it under contract. Awesome. But I have a lot more work to do just to get it to closing.
Yep. It's not over till it's over.
That's right. That's right.
We were supposed to close on July 2nd. And then by the time the lawyers started talking, it was too late. So then we had to close on the 3rd, but July 2nd was rolling around. I'm like, it's like, I'm not celebrating. Like, it's not over until it's on record. And lo and behold, we had to wait another day. So July 3rd is when we closed, and I didn't celebrate.
I would have been able to sleep the night before. I'm like, well, I'll pull it an all-nighter, because I can't sleep knowing that I have to have a $48,000 deal closed tomorrow for my first deal. God, I hope it does.
Exactly. Yeah, I didn't sleep well that week. So
no, I'm sure. Well, Mike, knowing what you know now, for anybody who is new to wholesaling, wants to get into wholesaling, wants to learn how to acquire off-market deals, wants to know what it takes to get $48,000 deal, what is some advice, or what is a piece of advice you would give to somebody? Maybe if you would talk to Mike from June of last year, what would be some advice you give?
I would have, and it's kind of more like a learning lesson wrapped into advice, is I would have had a coach. I would have joined this group sooner than when I actually did. It would have saved you a lot of frustration, a lot of time, a lot of money. So if I were to tell someone, some piece of advice, it would just join this coaching group. It's immensely helpful. Even if you've done deals, you're going to learn so much more about like, how can you stand out from all of the other competition that you're with? Like, how is this seller going to go with you versus everyone else, and be able to get you more deals?
Which is something that you actually were able to achieve on this deal, because you talked early on that he was talking to a few people, but decided to go with you when it was all said and done.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I have that with, the deals aren't closed, but I got more in the pipeline where I have a lot of rapport with these people. So they know me by my name. So when I answer the phone, They know exactly who I am. I don't have to remind them, oh, I'm like the cash buyer who sent you that check. Like they know who I am and they're expecting my call.
I love it. I love it. So much great stuff. Now we're working on getting the review, because that review is going to be added, to people that down the road, that gives you just, makes you more of an authority in your space, right? It gives them proof that, hey, Mike has worked with other people. He's done this. He's not just somebody who's talking the game. He's actually playing the game, walking the game, whatever the term is. But so we're going to do that. And we're going to hang up now, finish this live, because we're going to have a phone call. We're going to talk, all right, we got some money, what to do next to get bigger and better, right? We want now to rinse and repeat. $48,000, great. But this is a transactional business. We got to go get the next deal, because we're only good as the next deal, right?
Exactly. So
Awesome.
Super pumped for the future on this. And
me too, bro. Me too. $48,000. I mean, come on.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, Mike, thanks so much, guys, from REI Freedom Fighters. I hope you learned a lot on this live today. It was a very long one, but Mike was so nice to take time out of his day. We're gonna go get on the phone now off this live and get him to make more deals. If you guys want to learn more about our coaching business, please reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to you more about it. Listen, even if we're not the right coaching program for you, Mike is proof that you should be hiring a coach. Coaches will get you to success much faster. The reason why I've been able to do 450 plus deals in my career with my business and my companies and my team members is because we always invest in coaching. So great lessons today. Mike, congratulations, brother. Congratulations. I'll give you a call in a couple minutes.
Sounds good. Thank you. Okay.
All right, everybody.
Bye.